But this is Duca on the move for Montreal. Dilly Duca, let's see what he does. A left foot shot, that's in! Dilly Duca beat his man, and the Rutgers product makes it 1-0 Montreal.
This is Off the Woodworkx with Kevin Laramie, the longest running podcast entirely dedicated to the Montreal Impact.
It's wide open now, Malice, plenty of room. As Pachuca have 5 players lined up across the back. An opportunity! It's Perrier for Montreal! The rookie! Bedlam at the Big O!
As we kick off Major League Soccer's 20th campaign here in the year 2015. Let's check out the starting lineups for this one. We begin. Take a look at Montreal's starting 11 under head coach Frank Klopas, playing a 4-5-1. Jack McInerney up top, and Santino, I know a guy you want to highlight, number 10 in the middle of the park, Ignacio Piatti.
Piatti's magic. He's the engine. Everything goes through him. He's the traditional number 10. It'll be 3.
He is the engine. He is the key. Everything's going to have to go through him in 2015. Ignacio Piatti. The success of the Montreal Impact is going to go through to Ignacio Piatti in 2015. As goes Piatti, as will go the Montreal Impact. Good day, good night, and welcome to a brand new edition of Off the Woodworkx. Today on the show, we're going to talk about the DC United versus the Montreal Impact. First game of the 2015 season for the Impact in Major League Soccer. Same for DC. Montreal lost 1-0 against DC United. Arrieta, a Costa Rican of all the nationalities, a Costa Rican, who scored against Montreal on a kind of a blunder from Evan Bush. Not really, because he was implicated a lot in the game, did some great save, got lucky on a post a couple of minutes after that first goal. But on that goal itself, I think he was maybe a little too aggressive, maybe, and paid for the price. One of the only mistakes he did in the last 2 weeks, and he dearly paid for it in that game. And another thing that Montreal's going to pay for it is Justin Mapp, injured. He is going to get surgery this week. 4 months right now. They're saying that he's be gone. It might be quicker if you ask me. Depends on how he can deal with the pain, because it's not a part of the body that is, well, it is used, but it's not. It's soccer, so you don't use your arms as much as a leg. But still, it's a dislocated elbow. Surgery later this week. Right now, the diagnostic and the prognostic for the amount of time he's going to miss is 4 months. So that brings a lot of questions. So we'll try to answer those questions today too. And at the end of the show, our first of a 2-part segment. Today it's going to be the introduction on Liga Deportiva Alajuelense, Montreal Impact's opponent in the Concacaf Champions League semifinal game that will be March 18th at the Big O, April 7th in Costa Rica. Right now working on a project of trying to make it down to Costa Rica. One thing for sure, I will be making it at the Big O March 18th. Get your ticket. Let's continue to mark history. Let's have another quest for a moment. Because yes, Cameron Porter gave us that moment. He did. Well, why not get another one? Why not get another moment against Alajuelense? And we'll talk about Alajuelense, the history of Alajuelense. You remember we did the same thing for Pachuca. And the history of Pachuca was really interesting. Alajuelense is even more interesting. How the club started and all that is really interesting. We'll get to the details at the end of the show. So let's start with that DC United Montreal game at good old RFK Stadium. Oh, the pitch was awful. 24 hours prior to the game, well, maybe 48, was snowing. And still 48 hours, 24 hours, there's a lot of snow. About 50 people were shoveling. Just the day before the game were shoveling snow out of the pitch. So it was in miserable conditions. I'm not going to blame the pitch for Justin Mapp's injury, but it didn't help. You know, he couldn't, his fall was awkward, and it's pretty much how he injured himself. And Awkward falls happen more often on bad pitch or bad grass. Bad pitch conditions, I can't speak today. Bad pitch conditions are they're going to have more bad falls on them, more awkward falls, more awkward play. And unfortunately, it cost an injury for the Montreal Impact. Oh, it's going to be really hard because let's just talk about it right now. Let's just get it over with. The Montreal Impact was really, that position was key because Justin Mapp is a unique type of player, being left-footed, being able to play on that right side, using that left foot skills, cutting back in, and be able to create chances for himself or for others. Almost all the chances in that DC game that Montreal Impact had, not everyone, but almost, I could count at least 6, were created by Justin Mapp. Either him straight shooting on goal from long distance or even from closer distance, or just opening the play up, setting up for Piatti, and then that's another thing. We'll talk about Piatti later. Setting more for Duca, even though at the other end of this, on the other side of the pitch, for Jack Mack. Well, Jack Mack was not really present in that game, but still, Justin Mapp was the guy creating the chances for the Impact in the first 3 games of Montreal in 2015. So with Justin Mapp being injured now for 4 months, what does it change for Montreal Impact? Does the Montreal Impact have to tactically change so that they can create chances going forward on the other sides of the pitch? You don't have another Justin Mapp in your roster. You have players that can try to play that same type of style, but they don't have the same type of skill on their left foot that does give Justin Mapp one more option on that left side that the other players don't have. So that really worries me because that's where the chances were created, and that's where we got our opening to cut back inside. It was on that left side. As much as Deli Duca is playing good, it's not the same type of player. He gets his opportunities by being faster, outpacing the defender that's on him, and getting looks on goal. Justin Mapp creates his chances by thinking about the play and using his skills and his cutback inside from the right side to inside to the middle with his left foot being open. Because as much as you want to prepare yourself for a left footer, in the heat of the moment, the instinct will be to cover the right side of the shot instinctively. And that opens up Justin Mapp's left foot, and that's going to be hard to replace. So tactically, the Impact need to change something. Do you change the whole formation to go to a 4-4-2 and having Argiro, McInerney share the workload up top, and then fill that space differently? That could be an option. You could just keep it as a 4-2-3-1 and just change the pathways, pathways between the midfielders so that you don't use that part of the pitch as often and try to use Del Duca a little bit more. Romero's almost cleared to come back 100%, but he's not there yet. What do you do so far? Do you move up? Do you sew up? Do you cover? A lot of things possible that you can do, but Montreal Impact is going to have to adjust. Thing is, it happened in the best time of the season for the Impact. Bye week in Major League Soccer this week. Their next game is March 18th. Alright, they're playing right after March 21st, I know. But still, they had a 10-day period that they can focus on Alajuelense and focus on the replacement of Mapp on that side of the field. That's important. So that's one of the key things that happened in that game. I spoke about Piatti. Piatti was not there. Piatti hasn't impressed me so far in any games in the 3. And I have a little theory of why. You know, when Piatti when Piatti arrived in Montreal, coming from San Lorenzo in the beginning of August last year, well, he was just coming off playing just week to week. And we're just in continuation of his play with San Lorenzo. coming here, he didn't adjust to the system. He wasn't trying to fit in and to think about how he wants his coach to play. No, he came in here and just played. And we saw the result. If you're looking at the highlights of his games against Houston, against Galaxy, the end of last year, you'll see Piatti on a different level than he is right now. A big different level. Way higher. His touches, his instinct just took over those games. He literally took over those games without thinking about it, just reacting because he played with San Lorenzo straight up to the point where he put the blue shirt for the first time. And now having an off season later than he's used to, about 6 months later than he's used to. So it was probably between 18 months between real off season, even though he was injured, between the end of last season, surgery and all that before the beginning of this season. His off season wasn't as productive, or he couldn't recuperate as much, and he had to think about the preseason. So Piatti's form, fitness, I don't think he's 100% recuperated from the surgery, and he basically didn't have 100% of a training camp. So his fitness, his form, is below par compared to last year. And that's my theory. I think that's why Piatti's not really playing good right now, and should be better off for Montreal in the long run to skip a start for Piatti and make him come back as a sub later on. Maybe not against Alajuelense, but maybe don't play him on March 21st. That's what I'm saying. We do need him against Alajuelense. I'm not going to lie. Especially more against a chirpier, maybe more dirty Alajuelense team than Pachuca was. Watching the game that Alajuelense played against DC United, that Costa Rican team plays really dirty. They're Concacaf, big time, more than Pachuca. Pachuca has a reputation of having some sort of honor and less gamesmanship, even though we saw those gamesmanship in the last 12 minutes in Montreal, which cost them the game at the end. With Costa Rican team, with Alajuelense, it's going to be worse. It's going to be more dive, more fake injuries, more Concacaf stuff. And we'll need Piatti because he's the only type of player that we have that can play that game. And you know what? We have to realize we have to stoop down to that level to win in Concacaf. And you know what? For once, my principles go out the door. I didn't say out the door. I said out the door. Which basically, that's where Altador is, out the door. We don't like him here in Montreal. Plays for Toronto, for God's sakes. My principles go out the door when I'm playing Concacaf because the ends justify the means. And if you want to get results in Concacaf, well, you have to play their game. And their game is called gamesmanship. Piatti needs to be up for that game. If you're looking at the scores of the game that Patrick Leduc and other journalists and reporters give to the players, a lot of people give Piatti 4 out of 10 for that game. That's generous too. Piatti is not the first on the ball, and when he gets the ball, he loses it or he just gets stripped away. Basically, he's like a half a second behind DC players. The defenders were always on him, and he couldn't get away with it. And I think that's a direct correlation to the fact that he didn't have a 100% training camp, and it's his legs that were affected. And that's where it seemed to be. Overall, he still has the same pace and same speed on the pitch when he makes a run and stuff. You don't see it there, but you see it when he needs to cut back and do short movement quickly. The change of direction quickly. The cutbacks, the spins. Those type of moves that define Piatti's play and were able to put him in good position to be able to finish goals from wherever inside 20 yards. I was generous. Inside 25. Which defined Piatti's play with San Lorenzo and with Montreal at the end of last year. He can't do that right now because he doesn't have that little notch of fitness and form you need to be able to achieve those. And maybe he doesn't have the trust or the confidence in his body 100% to try those moves. He doesn't want to get injured more. Maybe there's that too. So the confidence and all that together would explain a little bit why Piatti's below par and below expectations so far after 3 games. Not going to raise the red flags right now. 3 games. We'll come back to that discussion. Game number 10. That's going to be important. Because if in game 10, his contribution is still what it is right now, so not a lot, well, there's no value in that. And in a cap league, you need value. And we're not going to talk about trading him or all that after 10 games. No. But tactically, there'll be things that you can do after 10 games if Piatti doesn't produce like we need him to produce to be able to be effective in Major League Soccer and rack up points and not get gapped. That's the only thing I want Montreal to do in the first month of Major League Soccer campaign. Don't get gapped. Don't have 8 points between you and the top, or 10 or 12. Keep it between 4 and 5 at the most. Maybe 6 at the most. Like 2 wins off. 6 at the most. So it's reachable. And you don't have to go on a 10 games winning spree to make it there. So that goes for Piatti and for the gapping part. I'm a little surprised after a couple games, especially after the Pachuca games, but still that continued against DC's Dilly Duca. Dilly Duca. What a surprise. I don't know if it's the fact that he keeps his body in great shape. There's always that narrative at the beginning of every Major League Soccer season. The couple players that are really in better shape than the other ones will get on better runs, will outpace their coverers or their defender that's on them. A lot of times, and we've seen that with the Leduca in the games against Pachuca and the games against MLS. That's why I'm thinking it's not just that, because he was able to do that against Mexican players that are in the middle of their spring season. So it's fine if you do it to Major League Soccer player that just coming off training camp. They're not there yet. They're not at their fitness and their form yet. But when you do the same thing, that De La Duca just goes outside and gets back in, just like there was no defender, just outpacing and outfronting him. When De La Duca does that, shows you that he's in good shape, in good form, in good spirit too, and he has confidence. And I think those 2 goals that he did in Mexico, which are career-defining goals, 2 goals away in Mexico for a Canadian team in the quarterfinals of the Concacaf Champions League. Still a great moment for the club, which we forget because Cameron Porter scored a timely goal that was unexpected. But Dilly Duca, a hell of a performance he did in Mexico. And that does boost your confidence. And he's been playing well ever since. A return game with Big O. In that game against DC, for me, Dilly Duca was the player of the match for the Montreal Impact. A player that's played well in the first couple of games and struggled a little bit against DC United, Nigel Reo-Coker. I think Reo-Coker is the new Justin Mapp. Not skills-wise, but the fact that you have to manage his playing time. I think Rio and Patrice need to be interchangeable and need to alternate. I think Patrice should start, maybe not against Alajuelense, but definitely 21st Patrice plays 90 minutes, or at least 60, if he's good for that. I think Reo-Coker needs to be managed more. Don't forget, before the first game against Pachuca in Mexico, not one player of the Montreal Impact played 90 minutes played straight 90 minutes in the preseason in any games. Yes, there were more than 90-minute training sessions, but there was no games of 90 minutes. So you don't get that game shape. That's famous, or maybe more infamous game shape after a couple of games be in you. So Nigel Reo-Coker played 3 times 90 minutes. Well, twice, and then he got subbed off for strikers. But yeah, so that would explain maybe that you need to manage more his playing time. So get maybe Patrice Bernier to sub in to the 60th minute. Patrice gets the armband back and gets on the pitch and the chance to use his, because Patrice does take care of himself. He does take care of his body, even though he's getting slowly on the wrong side of 30. But if you ask me, the guy is in great shape. Always took care of himself. So Patrice could have an impact that way. I see it. We haven't seen him yet, but I think that way it could be useful. And maybe on more forward. Maybe if you got Donadell and either Malice or Coca there, Bernier could move forward, and who knows if you want Piatti to put Bernier instead of Piatti for 30 minutes and try it that way and see what can happen. Montreal hasn't scored a lot of goals. 3 goals in 3 games. You're not going to win the league with 3 goals in 3 games. You won't get relegated, which is a non-issue here. But 3 goals in 3 games, you're not going to get that far. So even if Montreal wants to win against LD Alajuelense, you need goals. So why not try that, what I was just saying, and try Bernier at the attack and midfield position in the last 30-20 minutes of the game as a experiment and see what comes out of it. He's responsible too, so nothing bad's going to come out of it. So that's one thing. Speaking of needing goals, I was expecting that to come with Argiro. And I was expecting more from Jack Mack, because Jack Mack in history from March to June, that's his time to shine. He did 10 goals in that span when he was with Philly. And last year did the same. You would think that more was gonna... You would think he's gonna do more, but no. But no. Jack Mack hasn't started. He's lacking confidence. And Jack McInerney is a player that really gets affected by his lack of confidence, or is when he is confident, when he is maybe overconfident, he gets a goaling streak, scores 2-3 goals by the bunch. So he's a striker that scores goals by the bunches, but he hasn't started yet, and it's time to. Dominic Argiro is a type of player that will put himself in position to score goals because of his pace, because of his awkwardness when he on the ball. Sometimes you think he's losing the ball, but he's actually putting himself in a good position. But even though he gets himself in good position, he's not going to be able to finish all those positions. So he's great to have, because you get excited to watch him and get into those positions that you're not expected to see him pull off. But he never pulls off the great thing that you need him to do at the nick of time. He'll get in that position and you'll miss. So we need more realism in his play, more finish in Argiro, because he does get into position, and he could be type of a target man that Montreal doesn't have. If you're talking about a Porter or a Jack Mack, totally different type of. Cameron Porter is a little bit of a mix between a player like an Altidore, which is a almost classic, but when I think about target man, I always have Edson, Buttle, Eddie Johnson, and Altidore in my mind, and like a mix of the three is a target man for me almost. So Cameron Porter is a little bit of a mix of that between that and Jack Mack. But look, the kid's a rookie. He needs to play 10 minutes a game slowly, because he has that fitness and he does have some type of impact. And let's face it, some intangibles in sport you can't explain. And that guy, for some reason, I can't explain it, but he gets that ball behind the net. I'm not basing myself solely on the Pachuca game, not at all. It's basically what I'm saying into the words of Jesse Marsh. That was one of the assistant coaches in Princeton last year, and is the coach of the Red Bulls right now this year. And he was really fond of it, and he was crying. He was yelling at everybody who would listen just before the combine that you need to invite that guy to the combine. Eventually, he did get an invitation to that combine to get that third-round draft pick, 45th for the Impact. That's going to be remembered forever now because of that quarterfinal goals that clinched Montreal's Impact spot in the semifinals. So, yeah, that's going to be interesting. One of my favorite things that happened with the Impact so far, Soumaré. I'm really impressed. He's so good in the air, probably the best that the Impact has. And I'm surprised his leadership skills, which I did not expect. I didn't think about it that way. But him coming to a French-speaking, a francophone area, and the defense, it's a francophone defense. And him coming into that situation, that environment, it helps him blossom to a level that maybe he couldn't achieve in Chicago. And that's interesting. It's a different way to look at a player's arrival to a team. And he comes into a team and takes a spot that was there. And it's his to lose, leadership-wise, in the defense. Him with Sima, we'll come back to Sima. There's a lot of things I like and a couple of things I don't like about Sima, but I think it's about the adjustments making between leagues. He's not used to being a little, maybe one level of skills underneath what he's used to, and that would explain why he might do things too quickly. But just to finish on Soumaré, really impressed with Bakary Soumaré. I was really not convinced at the beginning of the season. I thought it was too reckless, and so far we didn't see that part of his play. Hopefully it stays that way. But I'm being sold on him every time I'm watching play. So every minute of play he has so far is convincing me more and more. Coming back to Laurent Ciman now in the defense. Laurent Ciman doing great things. In the air is good, making a great combination with Bakary Soumaré. They have a certain chemistry. They can communicate really well. It's not just about the language, but it's about the non-verbal language. It's about how you look at each other, how you can think for the other one, how you can almost, it's a preemptive feeling. You know where the other one's going to be, so you cover the other spaces. Those type of chemistries, it's already there with Ciman and Soumaré, and that's impressive. What I'm worried about Ciman is he needs to, not that he's reckless. I wouldn't call it reckless. He doesn't tackle, cleats up and all that. No, it's just his timing on the tackles. It seems like the timing of his tackle are made for players that would do something that Major League Soccer players don't do. Like that one move, that 1 second, that usually a European player, I'm generalizing here, but it's just to explain my point, so bear with me for a second. When you're looking at a European player, the defenders will cut off almost all option immediately to not get beat and tackle him or be more proactive in the defense. In Major League Soccer, you're not expecting the attack. It's not every player is Robbie Keane, so you're not expecting every player that's against you to be able to pull off the one thing. So you can leave one side of your coverage open and focus the pressure that way, which is not the case in Europe because you have to close down right now, otherwise you'll get beat. You can choose the way you approach your attacker as a defender in Major League Soccer and back yourself up, be able to be more risky. But you won't get beat as much because of the skill level it's not far. I know, it's close. But that's where it's like that last touch. You won't get beat as often with the last touch in MLS than you do get beat in Europe. So I know I'm exaggerating, generalizing, but it's just to explain that point of view tactically. So I think that's the one thing wrong with Ciman's play right now. He might be a little too aggressive, not on his defenders, and not that he's reckless, but he's trying to close the play and to finish it off right now when he can just close the one play that could be dangerous towards the goal in Major League Soccer and give the chance to his partner to finish the play with the other defender could receive a pass. So that's one way to look at it that can explain Ciman. So that pretty much are my thoughts against the DC United game. Against the Montreal Impact that we said again, Montreal lost 1-0 on the road on bad pitch condition, and Justin Mapp's out for 4 months with a dislocated elbow that he's getting surgery this week. So we'll take a small break. When we come back, we'll do a small history of Alajuelense, and we'll preview a little bit the game coming up March 18th, Concacaf Champions League semifinals.
Alajuela, Liga, Liga, en la cúpula del fútbol, siempre reinarán tus colores, rojo y negro, son orgullo nacional. Fuerza, garra e inteligencia, nuestro equipo siempre lo tendrá. Liga, 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 campeón de campeones siempre serás. Liga, 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 campeón de campeones siempre serás. En el estadio Morera Soto disfrutamos la emoción y la fiesta del fútbol. Arriba liguistas, hagamos la ola, que viva la liga con casta de campeón. Arriba liguistas, hagamos la ola, que viva la liga con casta de campeón.
And yes, for the second straight opponent in the Concacaf Champions League, I found a dedicated song. If you go on YouTube, Himno de Liga Deportiva Alajuelense. It's not as catchy as the Pachuca one, I'm not going to lie. Had a little something about that Pachuca one that made you want to dance, made you want to... That one doesn't have the same thing, but more of the hymn, you know, it's more of an hymno. It's more of a theme of an anthem of some sort. I can see that song. I can imagine myself on the pitch and listening to this before a match and getting pumped up. So this was Himno de Liga Deportiva Alajuelense. All right, let's talk about the history of the next opponent of the Montreal Impact in the semifinals of the Concacaf Champions League. Again, get your tickets. About 17,000 tickets sold right now for the Big O. That was the word out of today. So get your tickets for next Wednesday night. The team, Liga Deportiva Alajuelense, was created in 1919 when a group of friends that used to play in a team called the Electra at first, and then 11 de Abril, April the 11th, they met at a Salon Paris. They met at a bar. They wanted to give the city of Alajuela, which is the second biggest city in Costa Rica right now, back then probably not, but they wanted to give the city a team that could represent them at a national level, at the top league, at the top tier. You know, the one thing we don't have in Canada, you know, the 1A league, you know, the one type, we don't have that yet. They wanted to create a team for that level in Costa Rica. So they played their first official game on August 2nd of that year against CS Cartaginés. If you remember, Cartaginés was a team in the Concacaf Champions League earlier this season, while in the prior rounds, they actually played LA. They got destroyed. But yeah. And they won their first match against Cartaginés 3-1. So Alajuelense was part of the 7 teams that built and formed the National League in Costa Rica back in 1921, which was the first real Type 1A league of Costa Rica, along with La Libertad, Sociedad de una Española, Herediano, Cartaginés, and Limonense. A couple of teams we heard before. If we heard of Herediano and Cartaginés, are a team that either Montreal played or we heard in the Concacaf Champions League before. So there's always Saprissa. Saprissa is usually known as the best team in Costa Rica. But this year, well, it's basically there's Herediano, but it's probably going to get eliminated by Club America in one semifinal. And the other semifinal in the Costa Rica is dominating CONCACAF. Out of 4 clubs left in the CONCACAF Champions League, you got 2 Costa Rica one. You got Herediano and you got Alajuelense. So you got a Canadian team and you got a Mexican team. So that tells you a lot about how this year seems like not a lot of Mexican clubs took that team, that competition seriously, except Club America, it seems. So going back to LD Alajuelense. So they finished 3rd last year in the combined table of 2013-2014. The spring and the winter to combine finished 3rd. Still qualified with the Champions League and made their way up to the semifinals up to now. They just eliminated 6-4 on aggregate DC United. And if you have MLS Live, the second game of that home and away series, I think the first game is there too. So if you look at MLS Live, those 2 games are on MLS Live. So you can watch Alajuelense versus DC United. And you can watch Alajuelense really destroyed DC United in the first game. And the second game, just in a couple minutes, around the 70-something minute game just changed. When DC scored, but then after DC scored, Alajuelense scored. And they destroyed every hope that Barra Brava and every other supporters for DC United had in that home and away series. It's fun to watch, and when you watch that game, there's one player that stands out for Alajuelense, and that's Alonso, number 8, their striker. Unfortunately, due to yellow card accumulation, he's not going to be there next game. He's missing the first game against the Impact on March 18th. That's a plus for Montreal, but Montreal is losing just a map injury again for a month. It's going to be a tough 4 months. Hopefully, he heals quickly. Maybe he got some genes that makes him heal quicker, and he comes back before. Let's remember, he's injured to the elbow, dislocated elbow. He never knows. It's a part of the body that you can still train of some sort. Not right now, but after a couple of weeks, he'll be able to get back on a treadmill and to keep a certain amount of fitness. And hopefully it'll be quicker than 4 months. We really hope so for Montreal's sakes. So, the main stadium for Alajuela, Estadio Alejandro Morera Soto, in the city of Alajuela. Not too far from, there's about an airport about 15 kilometers away from the stadium. So it's not going to be that hard of a transport. What's hard to find is a flight that goes to Alajuela. Trust me, I've looked everywhere. I'm the type of guy who doesn't like to fly. I don't mind flying. It's just I don't like getting off a plane and getting into another plane. I don't like stops. I don't like layovers. And I don't like to have multiple switching of plane for the same trip. I like it one way. Just Montreal, Alajuela, that doesn't exist. You have to go Montreal somewhere else, and Montreal, San Jose, and that from San Jose, Costa Rica, make your way up to Alajuela, which is probably what I'm going to do, because again, I'm working on a way to get there for the April 7th game in Alajuela. If you want to support me on that project, you can always do it. Patreon.com/2solitudes5rings. A portion of the funds dedicated to that account, my portion will serve as trying to sponsor my trip to Costa Rica to go cover that Champions League game live in Costa Rica. That would be amazing, going there with my microphone, with everything, and be able to record the atmosphere, the ambiance. Because who knows, if Montreal can pull a shocker in Costa Rica, it might be the biggest moment of the club's history, surpassing Cameron Porter's goal. That could be interesting. Very interesting. They do have a mascot. Yes, it's a lion dressed with the team color, which is our Dorori Negris, are one of the nicknames of Alajuelense. They got 3 nicknames. That team's got a lot of nicknames. Dorori Negros, which means black and red. Irizos, which means the hedgehogs, so you can call them Sonic. And the Manudos, which means big-handed ones. So good things, even though they have big hands, you're not used to it's illegal to use your hand in soccer. So that's one good thing. So they finished second in the 2013 regular season. The runners-up in the playoff. Runners-up really often. They won the Concacaf Champions Cup a couple of times. They won in 87 against the mighty River Plate. Alajuelense is the only Central American football team who took part in CONMEBOL's competition. So that's Copa Merconorte in 2000 and the Copa Sudamericana in 2006. Alajuelense is a Central American team that has reached the highest position in the club world ranking, placing 27th in 2000. They were invited to the 26th Copa Sudamericana, but lost 2-11 on aggregate to Colo Colo from Chile. So it's a Costa Rican team. People thought after the Pachuca, we're going to say win, but just win on aggregate. They advanced. So after the advancement, people were like, we're getting a Costa Rica team. It's going to be easy. Dude, that team has a lot of history, recent and old history, which means they're relevant right now in CONCACAF, and they can really well be, they can beat Montreal. Definitely they can. Will Montreal let it happen? That's the question. That's what we're all wondering. If Montreal's going to have the tools to put a couple past the keeper, because that's what's going to take. If you want to win that home and away series in semifinals of CONCACAF, you need to do what rarely Montreal have done in every home and away series that I've seen them play. That's put 2-3 past the keeper in the first leg at home. Take advantage of that famous or maybe infamous concrete pitch turf at the Big O. If you can take advantage of that and put a couple past the keeper, again, Alajuelense does play on the pitch. Single day, single night, every time. All day, baby. They play on that type of pitch, so they're used to it. So that's going to be, I don't know if that home advantage is going to truly be one. So that's going to be another interesting point in that game. All right, so now that we know a little bit about Alajuelense, I want to hear your predictions. You can let me know your predictions on Twitter at offthewoodworkx or on email offthewoodworkx@hotmail.com. I want to have your predictions so I can read your predictions in the pre-game show that will be out next Monday. So from now till Monday, let me know your predictions of your starting 11, your prediction for what's going to happen in the game, your score prediction. Is it going to be a great game at the Big O? Is it going to be another moment? Are we going to have another quest for a moment, let me know. Twitter at offthewoodworkx or by email offthewoodworkx@hotmail.com. And you want to support the Two Solitude Soccer Podcast and the Five Rings Podcast and Off the Woodworkx, you can do so on patreon.com/Two Solitudes 5 Rings. That account, it helps us with cost, bandwidth costs. It helps us with production costs as well, equipment costs, and it will help us be able to extend the coverage of all the things we do, be able to travel to competitions, be able to be there away for the Impact, for Toronto, for Vancouver, have more in-depth coverage as well. So with your support, we can bring that show and all those shows to another level. We are already the longest running Montreal Impact dedicated podcast, the most popular Canadian soccer show and podcast with the Two Solitude Soccer Show. So we're on the way there, but with your help, we believe we can make it even bigger and even better. So tell a friend about the show. You listen to all our shows, you listen to a couple of them, tell a friend, and go on patreon.com/Two Solitudes 5 Rings. And until next Monday for the pre-show, the pre-game, the preview of the first leg Concacaf Champions League semifinal at the Olympic Stadium, Montreal Impact, Alajuelense. Until then, have a great soccer.